Hello, this is the introduction to Chapter 4. It's supply and demand and how markets work and where prices come from. And you need to know it like ringing a bell. So, what is it? Well, markets. Markets determine the prices, and the prices coordinate the activities of billions of people around the world and make me behave like Mother Teresa, and you as well, even though I'm not. So where do prices come from? The interaction of supply, there's supply, and demand. So when we talk about this, you have to study it. What is demand? First, as if supply does not exist. What's the relationship, the law? Why is the relationship inverse? The law of demand says the relationship between price and the quantity that consumers will buy is inverse or negative. Well, why? There are two reasons, the income and substitution effect. Then we take individual demand and we add everybody's individual demand, take the horizontal sum because we add everybody's quantities at every possible price, and we end up with market demand. Now once we've got market demand, we look at a change in the quantity demanded. That's a movement up or down the graph caused by a change in the price of the good. That has to be distinguished from a change in demand. See, change in quantity demanded, that's a movement caused by a change in price, versus a change in demand, which is a shift, and is caused by one of the things that is assumed to be constant when you draw the demand curve up in the first place. So it's assumed that income is constant. If income changes, it'll cause a shift. Tastes and preferences, what people like or dislike, is constant as well. If that changes, it'll cause a shift. The price or availability of complements or substitutes to the good that we've drawn the demand curve for. If the price or availability of complements or substitutes changes, that'll cause a shift. The population, now we call this the number of buyers, but we mean a population change, more physical bodies moving into our market, then that would cause a shift. Or expectations, and by expectations we mean only consumers' expectations about the future price of the good. Not they think it's going to make them more popular or, I don't know, healthier or something. That's tastes and preferences. Expectations is consumers' expectations about the future price. Then after doing that, you go to supply. Same thing. You look at the relationship. The law of supply says that this is a positive relationship between the quantity that producers will produce and offer for sale in the market. That's quantity supplied, and the price. And if the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up. If the price goes down, quantity supplied goes down. Now, why is this relationship positive? Because opportunity costs increase as quantity produced increases. It's in the book. It's an important point. I put it all over the practice quiz as well. So there's individual supply, and then there's market supply, which is the horizontal sum of all individual firm supply. Now, once we have a supply curve for a particular product in a particular market during a particular period of time, we ask, what happens if the price changes? And the answer is, you just move to a different price and quantity combination on the supply curve. There's no shift, there's just a sliding or a movement up and down it. But what if one of the things changes that we assumed to be constant when we drew the supply curve in the first place? Remember, the supply is the relationship between price and quantity with everything else that affects suppliers' decisions held constant. So if one of those things changes, like input or resource prices, like the technology of production, like the price of related goods, like the number of sellers in our market, like sellers' expectations about the future price, or per unit taxes or subsidies. If any of those things change, that causes a shift of the entire supply curve. That's a change in supply. If there's a shift right, it's an increase in supply. If there's a shift left, it's a decrease in supply. Now, once we have supply and demand, we put them together and we look at what is equilibrium. Equilibrium is where a price at which the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. It's automatic. It causes harmony between buyers and sellers. At any other price, there will be either a surplus or a shortage, and if there's a surplus, the surplus pushes price down toward equilibrium. If there's a shortage, that causes a push up until there's equilibrium. So surpluses and shortages are the forces that push price toward equilibrium in markets. Now, once we've got equilibrium, then you get to play my game, and I'll show you where that is in a second, but you have to be able to play this game. And second, what if we don't like the prices? What if we say, oh, the equilibrium price is too high. Let's pass a law and make it lower by law. Or it's too low. Let's make it higher. So you can't sell below a certain price. These are ceilings and floors. And the consequences of this are predictable. There will be surpluses or shortages, depending on whether it's a ceiling or a floor. And there will be market craziness. And you can't forget about the craziness. Demens facina here is Latin for craziness, I believe, even though I'm not a Latin scholar. I do play one in the classroom, though. Okay, so here's demand. This is a beautifully flashed out example of market demand being the horizontal sum of all individuals demand. So there's individual demand 1, 2, and 3. And you see, if we stack these things in horizontally, this D3 here is market demand. If there were a fourth person that came, we would add their quantities, and then demand would shift outward to the right. The difference between a change in demand and a change in quantity demanded, if I press the change in demand button, what's going to happen here? Is a change in demand a movement along this demand curve or a shift? Oh, it's a shift. How about this one? Oh, it's a movement from point A to point B because only the price has changed. So these are all the shift factors, the constants. There's supply, and once again, supply, market supply, is the horizontal sum of all individual supply curves. So we have seller 1, seller 2, seller 3, and then we plot all of their supply curves. So this is just plotting their supply relationships. Seller number 2, dinkity dinkity dink. I should speed this up a little bit. Anyway, you'll see that these two supply curves are going to be at the quantities at each possible price are going to be added together, and then we will get market supply. It's kind of pokey. Anyway, market supply is the summed quantities of these two sellers at each possible price, and then we plot it on the graph here. So that's the difference between shift and that's market supply, which is the horizontal sum. Equilibrium here. Then effects of changes in supply or demand. So you can say, okay, what? Both increase. Oh, look, demand shifts right, supply shifts right. We end up with a new equilibrium right there. So you can do any of the combinations. It's cute. If there's an equilibrium, that's the equilibrium price. There will be a a shortage if the price is below that at $10. There will be a surplus if it's above it. Now for the exercises for supply and demand. If you go to this page, faculty.ivc.edu/mmcneil, and then you go to exercises, you will see supply and demand right here. These are exercises that you can do. And I have 2 for level 1. So there's a market. It's fur coats. It's assumed to be in equilibrium. That's the price of a fur coat. That's how many quantity is traded in our market each week. And then something happens. In this case, animal rights people release all animals being raised for their fur. Well, if you don't have the animals, you're not going to get the fur, so supply is going to decrease. Anyway, so you can play it. So you'd say supply decreases, demand, there's no change. Then equilibrium price, if supply decreases, equilibrium price is going to go up. There's up, there's up. And the quantity is going to go down. And supply shifted left because of resource prices. Let's see if we're correct. Oh, we're correct. What a surprise. So once you've done that, then you can go to the questions that have 2 shifts. So these have 2 shifts, both supply and demand shift. And when you read chapter 4, you'll see what the complication there is. Anyway, there's a practice quiz for you for supply and demand as well, right there. Beautiful. With hints. Look at this. Here's a hint. There it is. And then if you want the answer, there's the answer. So in addition to your practice quiz on Blackboard, there's this one if you want more work in it. Let's see, what have we got here? I hope to put up some supply and demand stuff here. But if you want to see Richard McKenzie's stuff, there's demand, there's supply by Richard McKenzie. They're short tutorials. If you want stupid, painful puns, 3-legged dog walks into a saloon in the Old West, slides up to the bar, announces, "I'm looking for the man who shot my paw." Well, if you're a glutton for punishment, that'll work. Anyway, that's the end of the introduction to Chapter 4. Thank you very much.